Time to talk more NFL right now. We have Erik from eTop21 Sports here with us each and every week. Erik, man, we are up into NFL Week 8. You and I are recording this one on Thursday, October 24th. So early in the day, a little before the first game of the week, that one's going to be the Vikings at the Rams. And this feels like the spot where you probably want to play the Rams as the home dog. They're a 3-ish point dog at home. Why it kind of feels like that from a spot standpoint. Minnesota undefeated to start the season. They had a huge game last week against the Lions, and I thought they played really well. Right? They sort of proved that they are a pretty good football team because we think of the Lions as a top tier team. They were in the mix with them. You kind of know the identity of this Vikings team now. Really good defense. They're going to come after you. And they have a couple really nice playmakers. If they get the ball to them, they don't have to put a whole lot of pressure on Sam Darnold. They seem like they're well coached. So I have a lot of positive things to say about the Vikings. Even coming off a loss, I think that was good. But that's a game that you kind of get up for. Right? That's a big game against a division rival. That's sort of a measuring stick game for you. And now you got to go on the road, short week. You play kind of against a sleepy Rams team that's been a little under the radar because they've been really banged up. They've been hurt. But a couple things that the Rams can do well, Erik, they can really run the ball well. With Williams, even though their offensive line's been banged up, they've been efficient running the ball. One of the best teams in the league actually running the ball. And it looks like they're going to get Cooper Kupp back. So they should have another big target there to take a little bit of the pressure off Stafford. I'd much prefer 3.5 to 4, but just from a side standpoint, this feels kind of like the right side to be on with the Rams this week.
Yeah, I actually have 3 bets in this game. I'll do the player props first. The first player prop I did is I went 2-2 at well over 36.5 yards receiving. I just kind of feel this is a little bit low because of the Cooper Kupp news. He's went 6 for 51 last game. He has gone 6 for 50 2 straight, 19 targets in 2 straight, has gone 4 for 50 in 4 straight, and 5 for 71 on 7.5 targets during that time frame. It's just, I think this is just a little over adjustment to the Cooper Kupp news. Getting him at a discounted price. He's still going to be the second guy in the offense in terms of the passing game. And then I did Jordan Anderson. God, I can't talk. Excuse me. Over 42.5. Exactly 3 catches every game. Has 2 games of over 65, 3 for 66 last week. And he's gone, and he's, with the game with the Vikings have to play, he's going to be featured a lot more than I think people realize. They're going to be rolling coverage to Jefferson. So I bet those 2 player props. In terms of sides, there's this interesting stat out that teams after they play the Lions this season and last season are 36% against the spread. I think that's because of the physical style the Lions play. Now you have the Vikings going on a short week, traveling across the country to play against the Rams. I think the Lions kind of showed the blueprint on how to beat this Vikings team, being able to run the ball and attack the middle. You mentioned the run game. Kyron Williams, he's averaging 90.25 yards per game, 4.1 yards per attempt. Also, I feel the public's due for some regression. Rhodes favorites are 24, 11, and 2 this season.
And the last few weeks, I think.
Last 2 weeks, 13 and 2.
Unbelievable. Yeah.
Rams could be getting Puka back. They're definitely getting Kupp back. They're going to be able to take advantage over the Vikings secondary, which I think is overachieving. I think it's a clear weakness. The slot wide receiver last week where Kupp is going to play, they gave up 8 for 112 to Amon-Ra St. Brown. Do we trust Sam Darnold to win with margin? When you look at Darnold over his career, he's averaging $171 and a 1-to-1 TD to INT ratio. O'Connell runs the same offense as McVay. So the Rams should know what's going to be coming their way. The young defensive linemen that you guys drafted have been looking better and better each game. I don't trust Darnold to win with margin. I think the blueprint to beat this Vikings defense, the Lions kind of showed. I think the Rams are going to be able to run the ball, open up the middle of the field, use Kupp, use Tutu.
Yeah.
So in terms of sides, I'm on the Rams plus the 3.
Yeah, we're both on the Rams side here. Rushing success rate this year. Detroit Lions, 4th in the league. Baltimore Ravens, 5th in the league. Washington, 6th in the league. They all have 45, 46% success rate. Number 2 in the league, the Rams, 48.3 rushing success rate. Really efficient rushing game. Should be able to move the ball on the ground, have another playmaker there out there. We're both on the Rams side. We move along, Erik, Titans at Lions. We see some big lines now. Vegas is starting to bump some of these things up because the bottom up, just reading through the DVOA metrics and statistics. And again, like DVOA and EPA and success rate, like all these things, none of them are perfect. But when you take a look at all of them, you can kind of get a really good view or like a snapshot of what teams are really good at, where teams really, really struggle when you put them all together. And the bottom teams this year right now are really bad than what they're saying. Like the bottom 4 or 5 teams have just been really struggling. And one of them has been the Titans. They're up to an 11-point dog here against your Lions. At what point is this a buy-in? We had Rudolph stepping in for Levis last week, started fine. They were actually up early, but then they started turning the ball over, fumbled a snap, and then he was pressured a ton of times, only 7 of 17 with pressure. They couldn't give him a clean pocket at all. And then the Titans also made a trade recently, or we're going to talk about some trades coming up a little bit earlier, but a little bit later on. What do we do with this team now? Like, where is our buy-in point for the Titans? Because for every team, that's the thing. When you hear, I watch shows or if you hear podcasts, and I don't like when people say, I can never bet this team again. Because for every team, there's got to be a buy-in point, right, Erik? Like, as gamblers, we have to be able to say, no matter how bad these teams are, if they get up to 12, 14, 16 points, at some point, you have to just kind of hold your nose and go, are you there yet with this number against your team?
So the thing is, are the Titans going to just become sellers? They just, along with the D-Hop trade a couple hours ago, they traded Ernest Johnson.
Yeah.
So, are they sellers?
And they were even asking their coach, are you trying to win this year? He's already having to answer those questions like only in week 8.
So that's a big thing. This is the biggest favorite the Lions have been since 2017 against the Browns.
Yeah.
And that it's just such a big number. I know Campbell is 17-7 as a favorite. Most of those were in the line is 5 or less. The spot, it's kind of says to fade the Lions. The Lions.
Yes, we just talked about it with the Vikings too.
Yep. And who do they have on deck? They're going to Green Bay. So, I mean, it kind of has it. It like the spot and the situation are kind of saying to take the Lions. Lions DVOA, it did go down defensively. PFF defensive grades kind of stayed the same. They got a pass rush during the game when they needed it, but at the end of the game, you could really tell that's when they missed Hutchinson. PFF grades the Titans as the 2nd worst team in the league. DVOA has them as the 6th worst team in the league. They started Rudolph, who looked just as bad as Levis. What's up with Pollard's health? I don't know if you saw the game, but it was early in the game. He took that shot, and I was like, great, I'm on his receiving yards over. It didn't hit. How the hell is he coming back in the game? He should not have been allowed. He was knocked out cold. Calvin Ridley, huge positive matchup with Lions secondary, but who's going to be able to throw him the ball? Titans defensive line is great. Lions, one of the top 3 offensive lines in the game. They should be able to protect it. We're getting Goff MVP love now. Lions, best team in the league talk. The spot of the schedule says it, but this right now where this number's at, it's just a dead number to me. If this gets to 13, I'm interested. 14, I'm really interested. But when it's between 10 and 12 in that area, that's just a dead area to me, and I really don't want to do anything with it.
Yeah, I can't do anything here. I'll stay away. I mean, it just feels like the type of game, like, could the Lions be up by 16 and you just get a garbage touchdown late from the Titans? Right? Like, that's how you're looking at it if you're playing the Titans. Not even like they're going to have to be all that competitive in this game. Are the Lions just going to be in a spot where, like you said, in between big opponents? Are they worrying about winning this game by 25 or 30? Who knows? Browns, a 9-point home dog against the Ravens. And the Ravens have been playing really well lately. And Lamar is in one of the best stretches that he's ever had. 5th game where he had 5+ passing touchdowns and 0 interceptions, which is the most since he's been in the league since 2018. They did get a little banged up, though. Humphrey had a knee injury, didn't return to the game, and their secondary has already been a bit banged up. I think Mollett and Malik Harrison, the linebacker. So you get Jameis starting here. Jameis is a guy who is really liked by a lot of locker rooms. You hear him talk. He's a kind of good speaker, gives these inspirational speeches and stuff. I think this will give them a little bit of a bump here. And you have a divisional game where the Ravens are on the road. Is this number okay for you to play the Browns at home with Jameis?
I gave this out on my show on Tuesday at 10. I still like it at the number it's at. Lamar Jackson's a favorite, is 41%, with a line of 7 or higher. Winston as a dog is 65.5% ATS, getting 3 or more. Last 20 years, home divisional dogs getting 3.5 or more, 55% against the number September and October. Last 20 years, when you raise that up to 6.5, bumps up to 56%. Last 6 years, it's 67%. I think this is a good matchup for Winston. This kind of blew my mind. Ravens give up the most passing yards per game. And now you're subtracting Humphrey potentially from this mix.
An already banged up secondary before he was banged up.
Yeah, I think Winston is going to be able to throw the ball. He did target Jerry Jeudy a lot. I know Cedric Tillman looked great. I think he's going to lean on Jeudy a little bit more. The one weakness of the Ravens defense is covering the tight end. I think they're going to use Njoku, Conklin, and Wirfs, and I'm spacing on their guard that was out. He's coming back. So Wirfs and Conklin made the offensive line look better. You're getting a guard back this week.
Chubb now another game.
I think this is a situation where I know what happened with Watson was terrible, and everyone is saying, like, we miss him, blah, 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 whatever. But we've seen little tidbits that there has been a little dissension with Watson playing, with him not there. And you mentioned it, Winston coming back and playing. I think this is a little bit of a rally call. Since 2013, backup quarterbacks getting their first start are 62% ATS. Chubb back. He looked great. Ravens just allowed 125 yards to the Bucs on the ground, with the Browns offensive line being healthier, looking better. And I have them higher than the Bucs. I think they're going to be able to run the ball. Did you know that they also are allowing, the Ravens defense also is allowing more yards per game? So this team bleeds production, but yet they're winning. Ravens have this knack of letting teams back in the game. Happened last year when they played the Browns. They're up double digits. Browns came back and won. They're up against the Raiders, came back and won. Even against the Bucs on Monday night,
they were down 10.
The window was open for a back door, and then after that Godwin injury, the sales kind of went out of the building. Yep. When you look at the Browns game versus the Bengals, look, missed extra point, missed field goal. Bengals ran back 100-yard kick return. Browns should have covered that game. Browns had more yards per play. When you look at the box score, they won the game. I feel divisional game 10 is way too much. In this case, 9. I took the Browns here.
I think I'd be okay from like 7.5 above. Like that would be like from between 7.5 or above, I'd be on the Browns. I definitely wouldn't want to go down to like 7 or below, but at anything above a touchdown, I'd be on the Browns side here. Agree, for just the same things. They should be able to run the ball better. They're just going to be a little bit better, like energy overall with this team, because it's going to feel fresher, and they kind of have the weight, unfortunately, of that Watson playing and what that was doing to them, because you couldn't have him healthy and not playing. Like you just couldn't do it. So they had to keep trying to force it as much as possible. Browns feels like the right side here at home. This next game is one that I really want to pick your brain on a little bit, because the Packers get a nice win, meaning it was a game where they didn't play very well. They should have won that game easily. They dominated in the box score. You and I like the Packers in that spot a little bit, and they absolutely should have covered that game. Like, I think Stroud had 86 yards passing, something like that, going into the third quarter. The Texans did not have much total yards at all. It was because the Packers kept turning the ball over. But they got a big win against, like, their mirror image, I think, on the opposite conference. The Packers and the Texans were kind of the two buzzy young teams led by young quarterbacks that everybody was predicting to make deep runs this year. There was a big kind of national game, and the Packers have had a really good run after those couple games when Love was hurt, and it felt like, their season could be in real trouble right now. This feels like a real Jags spot. Like, I would really like to play the Jags here, but they're just coming back from London. Does that bother you at all?
I mean, you're right. The spot does say, hey, look, let's take the Jags here. But again, I don't know. Me
neither.
The Packers, they just beat the Texans. They didn't look good. They have the Lions on deck. Did the Jags find something with Bigsby? 26 attempts, 118 yards, 4.5 yards per carry. Now, granted, it was against the Pats, who PFF has graded as the 27th worst run defense. When you look at PFF's grading, the Packers are number 25, allowing 115 yards per game, and just gave up 115 to Joe Mixon by himself. The worry point here, like you mentioned, Jags coming back for London. Now, when we look at the trends, teams that didn't take a bye that come back, it's just 50-50. There's no, you know what I mean? There's
no advantage either way. Nothing to take from it. Yeah.
Love, in my eyes, he hasn't looked right since injury. He's too prone, throwing off the back foot. Jags 19th best pass rush per PFF. How is it even possible when you look at the young talent that Walker, Allen, et cetera, et cetera? That should be one of the top 5-10 units in the league. Packers did a great job of taking the deep ball away from Stroud. Now, if they do that here and look to take away that from Brian Thomas, which is doing way better than I initially thought he was.
He's been sneaky good too, kind of under the radar, right? Like he's not been but he's been more productive than Marvin Harrison Jr. and kind of the top run wide receivers so far.
And that's because these defenses that the Jags have played have been giving the deep shots because everything's filtered to the middle with what's his face, Kirk and Evan Ingram, who's looked great since he's come back. Now, Thomas has looked great, but it hasn't meant more wins for the Jags. Are they going to just give them the deep ball to Brian Thomas? I really don't know what is it going to be like. It's going to be 83 degrees in Jacksonville on Sunday. How are the Packers going to handle that heat? Now, granted, it's kind of been unseasonably warm up here. I'm in Illinois. They're just stayed up. But it hasn't been like 83 in Florida heat. You know what I mean? So I want to get to the Jags, but again, I kind of feel like we could see a 4.5, maybe even a 5 in the market. I think there's going to be more money just kind of keep on coming in. So I'm just going to kind of sit back right now and just kind of wait.
So, I
want to get, I'm going to be on the Jags for sure.
Me too. I think we'll get a better. We might be able to get better.
I mean, I'm looking at it right now. I mean, there's 4s. And there's a couple 3.5s.
Okay.
So
okay.
I don't know. I'll just kind of monitor it.
That I'm okay with 3.5 to 4, right? Like that number I'm fine with. Maybe we can get it up a little bit. It's just not laying it with the Packers. This isn't one of those road favorites. This is one of the ones that it feels like should come kind of regress, right? Like these types of games where they look sort of easy with the Packers playing a lot better than the Jags, but the Jags should still be able to be really competitive here and have some kind of key spots where they can match up well. Colts, Texans. Colts, Richardson just not good throwing the ball. Like he's a beast running the ball, and we saw him kind of will them to a victory last week. Texans were able to stay in the game because they were able to turn the Packers over a little bit. Their defense helped them, but I mean, they leaned a lot on Joe Mixon. Also, he's been really, really solid for them. But Stroud only had 86 yards in that game. He got sacked a ton, pressured on a bunch of dropbacks. I just don't know what to do with this Colts team with Richardson because he's so hard for me to trust with how inconsistent he's been throwing the ball. I just love the version of this Colts so much better with Joe Flacco and with Taylor. They're just like more of a trustworthy football team. But I don't really love the Texans. Last week, they didn't look good. They almost got lucky and got away with the win because the Packers just turned it over repeatedly, but they really didn't look great, I think, on both sides of the ball, to be honest. So this one's really kind of a stay away for me. Erik, do you have any opinion?
Yeah, I took the Colts here plus the 6.
Yep.
I don't. What's it at right now?
5.
Yeah, I would still take it here. I mean, I kind of feel like the book is out on CJ Stroud. Look what the Packers did. The Packers they're like, Mixon, go get yours, take the underneath stuff. We're just going to not let you throw the deep ball. And he looked like a lost puppy out there. 10 for 21, 86 yards. Nico Collins, for Stroud's career, has accounted for 32% of his production. This season, without playing 2 games, he's accounted for 34%. Not having Collins there, Stroud is struggling because he's the guy he looks for all the time. Stroud, 36%. ATS is a favorite. Shane Sykin, this one kind of stood out to me. Quietly a covering machine. 63% against the number, one of the better percentages in the league. Colts have a top 3 offensive line in the league, and I know the Texans are PFF graded 12 defending the run, and DVOA has the number 2, but they just had Josh Jacobs run over them for 6.3 yards per carry. And they have numerous injuries at the linebacker position. I think that the Cards are going to have success here. Not the Cards, excuse me, the Colts running the football. Jonathan Taylor trending to coming back. When you put this RPO with Jonathan Taylor and Anthony Richardson,
And we're different. Yep.
I think the Texans are going to struggle, and I think the Colts will be able to eat. Last 20 years, home divisional favorites are 46.4% ATS. When you look at October and September, that dips down to 44. Like I said, I just feel that the blueprint is out. I'm getting a road divisional dog over 3.5, almost at 6. This is a no-brainer to me, and I'm going to say this. If you like the Colts here, what you want to do is you want to play them to win the South. Right now, you can find it at 5-1, because if they win this game, they're tied with the Texans. And nice. To me, if I look at this right now, if I just kind of take a step back, the Colts seem to me like they're kind of ascending and figuring some things out. The Texans look, they're just trying to treading water. Tank Dell literally had nothing last week. He was a 0 factor last week. He put up a goose egg. The person in our guillotine league is out because of nothing. So I just kind of feel that this is just the right situational spot. Colts are going to be able to run the ball, and I feel the book is out on CJ Stroud.
Erik, we move to our next one. Cardinals at the Dolphins. Is this Tua time?
I mean, it's looking like Tua is going to play. I'm going to say this. He got a lot of hate for saying he wasn't going to wear one of those Guardian helmets, but he didn't clarify his full statement. He is having the guy that makes Mahomes' helmet, which is specially like they do like 3D imaging of your head to protect it. He's going to be wearing one of those. So he is changing what he's wearing to more safer helmet, I guess.
Yeah, but he's making some adjustments.
He's making an adjustment. So it's not, he didn't make himself look good because he didn't do a good enough job explaining it.
Yeah.
But when now, we look at this team, Murray as a dog, 64%, road dog, 18-6-2, that's 75%. But what are we going to expect here from Tua?
That's the key, right? And at over a 3, I feel like it's got to be Cardinals or nothing, because I don't want to lay it with the Dolphins. And could he himself be a little jittery, right? And are they going to be very cautious with him again? If something happens early in the game, is he out? And we saw how bad this team is when he's not in there. They couldn't operate with Huntley and Boyle, whoever else was back there. And I still have major concerns about their defense too, even if Tua was in the game, the whole game. Defense like this would still be a spot I would be okay with playing Arizona. And then just the question mark of how much can we really expect from him? And that's built way into the line, Tua just being there and playing in the game and expecting him to finish the game. Because if this is not Tua, this number is Arizona -2, Arizona -1, right?
This is Tua. I literally have no idea what it is if it's not Tua. When we look at it, you're right. It's probably Arizona 3.
Yeah,
Arizona
like
three.
it might even be all the way up to 3. Yeah, absolutely.
Cards run a heavy zone coverage 71% of the time, 12th highest in the league. This is a great matchup for Waddle and Hill, but I'm really going to trust that Mike McDaniel is going to be able to figure it out because his game plan against the Colts after a bye, extended rest, was one of the most embarrassing game plans that I have ever seen in my life. I have literally no idea what they're doing. Were they sitting there and say, you know what, guys, 2 weeks, let's scheme how to get Jonnu Smith 12 targets? Like what, like literally what are you doing during that downtime? Tua, 63% ATS at home. Finn's offensive line, you got to give them credit. They only allowed 6 pressures and no sacks. Now they're going to be facing a Cards pass rush, which is 3rd worst per PFF. So they should be able to protect Tua, speaking as if Tua is going to be playing. Is Miami going to fight? It just, the one thing that's kind of stuck out to me these last couple of years is anytime this team has gotten punched in the mouth, there's literally no punchback. They just kind of roll over and it is what it is.
Yep.
Flip side, do we trust Miami's defense? 25th DVOA, 30th defending the run. Will the Dolphins be able to defend Murray in the run game? They gave up Richardson last week, 56 yards. Murray is more of an accomplished runner, but he's not looking to run as much as Richardson has run. He did have 63 yards last game. End of the day, this is probably a game where I'm going to look to get involved in terms of DFS. Is going to maybe like a Waddle, Kyler Murray stack. I want to be involved in terms of DFS, but I want to look. I feel everyone's going to look at Hill.
Yeah.
I want to look like at a different angle and use like different players here to get a piece of this game. But in terms of side, there's just too many variables, so I don't want to risk anything.
Falcons at the Bucks. Falcons are a 2.5-point favorite in this divisional game, and a lot of that's because we don't really know what to expect from the Bucks right now. They are really banged up. They lost Evans last week. Godwin got hurt at the end of that game where he probably shouldn't have been in because he can't do repeated onside kicks over and over and over again. You can see why they want to take a little shot having him in late, but it's a bummer to get hurt late in the game because he was having a great year. One of my fantasy teams has just been decimated recently that had like Godwin, Rashee Rice, and like legitimate awesome receivers to start the year, and all of them are done. So that's what's tough about the Bucks and the spot here is just what will they look like without some of those key weapons, or how healthy really are they? Because just on a pure number standpoint, it would say to take the Bucks in here as the home dog. The Falcons got a little bit exposed last week by Seattle, just really kind of beat them up in that spot. So do you have an opinion here, Erik, one way or the other?
I mean, Godwin and Evans both out. That means the Bucks will be counting on Sterling Shepard, Jalen McMillan, and Trey Palmer. But the Falcons defense, it hasn't looked great. 24th DVOA, 27th pass DVOA, 19th rush. PFF has them as a 10th worst tackling team. Cousins, the ball looked out of his hands. It looks slow. It looks weak. Hence why they moved London to the slot. They did that again in the Chiefs game. When you look at the second half from the Chiefs game on, London's production has been a lot more just because Cousins can't throw it to the outside. Bucks pass defense is awful. They're allowing the 4th most passing yards per game. They have numerous injuries to the secondary. The line flipped, and historically speaking, when the line flips, you want to take the team that has become the dog like the Bucks have. Will the Falcons' offensive line, which has been awful this season, be able to set up running lanes for Robinson against the front of the Bucks? That's a big question. What Baker will we get? There's been times when Baker has looked great. When we look back at that game against the Ravens, the Bucks had a chance to go up 14-0.
Yeah.
If they go up 14-0, that game is completely different. Then they had a chance to like match the score, and he threw that god awful pick to Humphrey. He's just so erratic with what Mayfield we get. Another thing where I don't think either one of these teams are that good, and that's just a thing I don't want to be involved in. You got to pick a Falcon guy. Which guy do you want? Do you want Pitts? Do you want London? Do you want Robinson? One of those guys should be in your DFS lineups. You make that decision. That should be your only involvement here.
Yeah, this one, I'm probably going to be staying away just because it's such, like you said, so many of the injuries. The Jets, Patriots, we're already hearing some rumors like Mayo being on the hot seat, which is bizarre, like so early on. But
I'm hearing that he's not well liked, and I mean
right,
that's kind of the thing. Like historically speaking, these coaches that were former players, it just doesn't work out. It doesn't click, and we're seeing it here just because these players just aren't registering for him.
defensive and running the ball, they were good. Those are the two things that you kind of would expect from them, and they can't do either of those anymore. You know, they're just really struggling.
I just don't get what's going on. I mean, when we look, one thing that stood out to me, Drake May.
He looked really good. He looked really good.
Games.
Well, I think they got the quarterback now, right?
Yeah.
I really do think he is a quarterback, like really small sample size, but he has no line and no receivers. So he is in a terrible position, and he's looking like the best part of their offense.
I mean, by far. And I don't know what Van Pelt is doing. He's refusing to use Stevenson. In my eyes, he is their best player. Why did he only have 9 touches against the Jaguars? Like that game after they were up 10-0, Jags went up 14-0. I'm giving that ball
over and over and over.
Just to kind of calm down, get the ship running right. But for whatever reason, they're just I don't know if it's because of a couple fumbles they had. There's a little spat between him and Mayo. I don't know. Like there was that thing at the beginning of the season where they talked about the person answering the question said, how is everyone taking it with him not being here anymore? And he was alluding to Matt Judon because Judon just got traded. But Stevenson thought he meant Bill Belichick. So Stevenson started answering the question like it was Bill Belichick the guy was referring to, and then the guy stopped him. He's like, no, it's Matt Judon. So I think there's just some issue between those two guys there. Yeah. Jets defense, I know everyone's trying to make it a thing, but they can be run on. And I said it in our scouting reports we did. If Sauce Gardner is allowed to hand fight, he's going to be elite. If he's not allowed to hand fight, he's going to struggle. And this year they're calling the hand fighting on him. So he's giving up a ton of passing of PI. And this is going to be the thing that blows your mind. The Jets are giving up this year. The Jets have had the second most pass interference called on them and have given up the most air yards per pass interference calls. So they're just calling the PI now. They're calling what they should have been calling a couple years ago.
They allowed 409 total yards, 31 unanswered points. Their special teams allowed a blocked field goal and a block extra point. 2 weeks ago, they fired the head coach. Last week, they bring in the, all-pro wide receiver that everybody was hoping they would. They made their big changes, and they haven't looked any better at all. Not at all. I just don't think they should be favored over anybody, the worst team in the league right now, by 7 points on the road. That's just a ton for them.
That's just way too much. Hunter Henry, I kind of looked at him in DFS.
Yep.
7 targets a game, 5.5 receptions, 66.5 yards since May came in. But terms aside, look, another thing I want nothing to do. I'll do Henry and DFS in my tight end position since it's just a wasteland there.
Eagles, I keep trying to find the spot to play against, Eric. They had a big win last week, but it was a game I think they got really up for because it was the Barkley versus the Giants revenge game. You could tell that Sirianni was asking Barkley, you want to, run it up, or you want to get your career high in yards. And Barkley was actually pretty cool, saying let some of the young guys eat. But that game, everything went really well for them. Kicked the crap out of the Giants. Their defense played really well against the banged up Giants offensive line. And quietly, the Bengals have been playing a lot better. All year long, their offense has been good. They didn't score in the first half last week, but they did what they needed to do late in the game. Where I've been a little bit more piqued and interested in them is their defense for the second straight game, they allowed 14 or fewer points in a win. The first time they've done that in back-to-back games. And yeah, sometimes it's against inferior opponents, but that gives you the opportunity to kind of get your defense right, start doing the things you want to do. Just kind of remember how Anarumo has been with a lot of these defenses. It's usually been making adjustments, kind of coming on strong a little later in the season. So, I think it's a pretty good spot for the Bengals here. Is the number okay? Am I on the right side? Talk to us about this game a little bit.
I mean, in my eyes, this comes down to which team do you trust more. The one thing that stood out to me for the Bengals is we've seen them play up and down to their opponents. They were outgained by the Browns. Browns missed the field goal, missed an extra point, gave up a 100-yard return. That's how they lost it. They probably should have lost the game. They should have lost the Giants. But on the flip side, they should have beat the Chiefs. They should have beat the Ravens. This team is very inconsistent. Defensively, so far to start the season, they've been a nightmare. 20th DVOA, 20th defending the pass, 22nd defending the run. PFF has the Bengals as a 12th worst coverage team, and they run mainly man coverage the majority of the time. A.J. Brown leads the league in fantasy points per route run against man coverages, averages 5.79 yards per route run against man, and is the highest graded PFF player when guarded against man coverage. So there's a lot of A.J. Brown factors. His over-under per yardage is 72.5. So I bet A.J. Brown over 72.5 receiving yards. Flip side, can we trust this Eagles defense to get stops against Burrow? Eagles play man coverage 7th most in the league, rank 5th worst in success rate running man coverage, allowing 6.21 yards per reception. Running man, that's the 10th worst in the league. But when you look at it, who do you think leads the Bengals in target share against man coverage?
Higgins.
You are correct. T. Higgins, 29% compared to Chase's 21%. So I think people are going to look to go to Jamar Chase here in DFS, but this is really more of a T. Higgins type game.
Good call.
Will Burrow have time? PFF has graded the offensive line as the 12th worst. Important note, Brown exited the game last week. Ford came in, and to say he struggled would be an understatement. Eagles had the 3rd best pass rush per PFF. In terms of sides, I'll be honest, at this point of the season, I really don't trust either team. I think this is going to come down to which team has the ball last.
Yeah.
I think there's going to be a time where you can get plus money on both teams. I'm going to bet A.J. Brown, I already did this, over the 72.5 yards. And I'll probably do a thing where I put T. Higgins in and fade Jamar Chase just because people are just naturally going to go to Chase. But this year, it's when a team plays man, you go to Higgins. When they play zone, they go to Chase.
The Buffalo Bills are a 3-point favorite on the road at Seattle. Seattle comes off a really nice performance, probably their best game of the season just overall. And when they've got Walker out there running the ball pretty well and they're able to use him as a playmaker, I mean, they have a lot of weapons there. It's just their defense, they've had some questions, and it's been their offensive line kind of in the trenches where they've struggled when they're missing a few. They already have a weak offensive line, and then when 1 or 2 guys are hurt, that's when they just look bad in some games. But wasn't the case last week. The Bills are favored, though, on the road at Seattle. So we were just talking about how many road favorites have been winning repeatedly. This is one of those games where I think the public bettor would probably want to go to the Bills and say, oh, yeah, the Bills, only a 3-point favorite against Seattle. I think they're the better team. The probably more sharper bettor would be on the Seattle side at a particular number. Is this a game that you have a strong opinion on?
I think we need to know what's going on with DK Metcalf. Word is he has a sprained MCL sprain listed week to week. They're saying he may even try to go. We don't know. And he's a big part of that offense. Can Seattle's line protect Smith? PFF has him graded as the 3rd worst offensive line. The right side has been awful. Fourth side missed the last week, and their right guard position was so bad, they were rotating players in. Bills have the 6th best pass rush per PFF. But the Bills do struggle to defend the run, and they're 9th worst in the league. Run blocking, if you're going to look at the strength of the Seahawks, it is that. DVOA as the Hawks, graded as the 10th best run game in the league. But when you look at Walker, it's kind of a weird to figure out. He's only rushed over 80 yards twice this season, but is averaging 4.7 a carry. Maybe with the potential of Metcalf being out, they'll look to give him more run. He's only had over 15 rushing attempts in a game once and is averaging 13 attempts per game. Grubb was really adamant, even Metcalf said they needed to get the run game going at the beginning of the season, but we just haven't seen it. He did great last week, and granted he was sick and played, but they're just not running the ball as much as I thought they were. Spot-wise, look, I'm tempted to take the Seahawks here. Bills have to travel cross country after beating the Titans, which they looked a little sloppy, and now you have to travel all the way to Seattle. We have a game against Miami on deck. Bills offense with Cooper, it gives them more of a threat. You have this guy you have to kind of roll coverage to, even though he is dropping a little bit more. This is going to open up stuff for Shakir and Kincaid, but he needs to know what to run. There was that play, he scored a touchdown. He did not know the passing route. To me, if I get a 3.5, I'll be enticed by the Seahawks. But right now, I'm not rushing to bet this number.
We have the Saints as a 7-point dog playing the Chargers, and this game's tough for me because the Chargers just are not a good enough offense to feel like they should be favored by this many points against anybody really in the league. But the Saints are so decimated by injuries, and they just look like some of the guys have given up. This is a bummer one because we like the Saints. They had a really good start to the year when they were healthy. They looked like we were hoping. Their offense was much better. They looked different, a lot more creative. They just had no depth, and they're not really well coached on the head coach spot from Allen. And you could see that as soon as they had one or two injuries on the offensive line, then boom, everything fell through. And Allen does some of the weirdest things. He called a timeout right before halftime and then took a knee. And they dropped a wide open interception. Over the last 11 days, they had over an 11-day stretch, they allowed 110 points and 1,500 yards.
That's insane. And I mean, so the first thing we need to know what's going on with the quarterback. I looked at all these Saint fan pages, and it was split down the road. 50% of them said Carr is going to play. The other 50% said he's going to sit out. So we need to know what's going on there.
Yep.
If Carr's back there, you're at least intrigued. Saints offensive line is a mess. They're rolling out third-string guys who should not be on a roster. And for as good as Rick Dennison, their offensive line coach, is, you can't fix not having talent. They're allowing 21. They allowed 21 pressures and 5 sacks last week against the Broncos. Now you're going against Bosa and Mack. That has disaster written all over it. This is a big margin, as you mentioned, for one of the slowest paced teams in the league in the Chargers to cover. Saints are the second worst run defense per PFF, 12th worst tackling team. And with
some of those times, they just look like they're giving up.
With all the Saints football I've watched the last 2 weeks, I think they're not graded low enough. They have been awful tackling. Herbert, 31% ATS second half, one of the worst last 20 years. Maybe we look to take the Saints second half. But with what I saw from Rattler, I just can't do anything. I think Rattler is awful. Jack Hare, the kid from Fresno State, was playing. I'd be more enticed to play them with him than I would with Rattler. So I'm going to sit this one out and just not get involved.
Me too. It's a stay away for me. Also, I cannot lay it with the Chargers. Bears are a 2.5-point favorite or so on the road playing the Commanders. Now, this is not going to be Daniels, right? This is going to be Mariota in this spot. But I will say he played really well last week, and he moved the ball well. I don't think Mariota is as good as Daniels or has a ceiling, but he is a veteran quarterback who's been around for a while. He has played well in the league in little stretches. And now this feels like a game that, if this is Daniels, how many points is that different?
But for me, I was hoping this would be Daniels because I want to fade this Commanders team. This
Me too.
They've been on has been insane. They're 9 for 9, fourth down, fourth downs. The last team to do that was a 2004 St. Louis Rams. Their efficiency this year, they're ending drives in an offensive score at 64.1% of the time.
Insane. And it's not sustainable. It doesn't matter how good or who you are or who you're playing against. And I completely agree with you. Is this the spot, though? Are we getting...
Yeah, but you can't you have a rookie on the road. You can't. My world, that's just non-existent.
Yeah.
The second best team is the Ravens with 50.7%. So you're due for some regression. They have the fewest punts on the year. I don't trust this team to win with margin. Now, I will say this. Commanders' defense is not good. I think they've taken advantage of being able to force teams to pass. They run a man coverage and allow the highest first down read rate and have the worst success rate using man coverage. And I know people are going to be like, oh, DJ Moore. But when we look at the numbers, Keenan Allen has performed best for the Bears against man coverage. I wanted a piece of the Bears passing game here, and Keenan Allen is going to be the piece I look to take here against the Commanders. In terms of betting, look, a rookie quarterback winning with margin or Marcus Mariota, that is nothing I want.
Stay away for me too, completely, because I'm looking for the spots to fade the Commanders, but without Daniels, there's no value on the opposite side of them. I'm not laying the points with Caleb, who's been playing much better in the Bears on the road. A couple big spreads coming up in the next few. Kansas City is a 10-point favorite on the road playing against the Raiders here. Divisional road dog like this, that's huge. Every now and then the Raiders will kind of sneak up, and they beat Kansas City last year. KC did just make the trade for Hopkins, so they should have another playmaker in here, but gosh, it's another situation where the Raiders haven't been doing a whole lot positively to make you really excited about playing them. And Pierce, again, just watching the way he manages games late, I'm just scratching my head so often, like what he's doing in this modern age of football. Man, this is one where I would like to play the Raiders, but I don't know if I can get there. Are you there?
Yeah, I gave this one out on my show too on Tuesday as well. I took the Raiders here. I got them at 10.
Yep.
Mahomes road favorite, 47%, laying 3.5 or more, 45.9, 7.5 or more, 43.3%. Road favorite laying 3.5 or more, 44. Road favorite laying 7.5 or more, 25% against the number. Last 2 years, teams after playing the Niners are 38.5% ATS. Why is that? Same as the Lions. They're just physical. I feel this is a good situational spot. To fade the Chiefs, just beat the Niners in a Super Bowl rematch. Now they're traveling to Las Vegas and laying double digits. Last 20 years, teams laying 10 or more, 47.3% ATS. Road divisional favorites laying over 7.5, 44.5%. Chiefs injuries are adding up. Pacheco, Brown, Rice, and now Juju Smith-Schuster isn't playing. And you expect D-Hop to come in and
just know everything and be like catching 10 passes. Yeah, it's like, no way.
It's just unrealistic.
It's take a little while.
Chiefs are middle of the pack defending the tight end. I think there's a path for the Raiders here to work the middle to go to Brock Bowers. And Brock Bowers has been electric to start the season. Minshew is better for the offense. He can move the ball. He gives the Raiders a chance at least to cover this number and score some points. I think the spot and the trends are telling me to take the Raiders, so I took the 10.
Last couple of games for this week. Another big one. Broncos. Bo Nix and the Broncos are a 10-point favorite here. This is back to Bryce Young starting for the Panthers because looks like Andy Dalton has a little bit of an injury. This Panthers team they had that one game where they got a little bit of a bump, and they've looked better with Dalton, but last week was one of those games like, why were they so bad? How come they couldn't run the ball at all or move the ball at all against Washington? But man, Denver, who's got a fantastic defense, they're a 10-point favorite, Erik.
So funny thing, like I'm in the circuit contest with one of my buddies and we were talking about the Panthers and I'm like, the line kind of says to take the Panthers. And he goes, you got to treat the Panthers like a nanny with double D's. Look at them.
Yep.
But you got to take the Packers here.
It's too much for
Bryce Young starting. So you're a little worried about that. When you look at it, Panthers first half. Teams that have scored 7 points or less are 5-1 against the number for the first half of the following game. So I'm a little intrigued by that because I think this could get up to 6 or 7 for the Panthers. The Broncos have had 3 games this year where they haven't scored in the first half. That's a lot. Peyton, 2-7 against the number off of extended rest. Teams coming off a road win that are playing the home the next day, next game, you'd think they'd be pretty good against the number, only 43%. Then there's this weird thing that teams that won by 17 or more playing a team that lost by 17 or more are 39% against the number. Trends are telling me to take the Panthers. The one thing that the Panthers have is they have a great offensive line. This is a top 10 unit in the league. If they can establish the run and commit to the run, which they've done in the past, and just work Hubbard and Miles Sanders, and then get some quick hitters to the outside, there is definitely a path here that they can win. So the trends, I see a path in my head. I'm going to be on the Panthers. I want 10. If I see a 10 that pops, is this at 10 right now?
Yep, it's 10 right now.
Yeah, so I'll do it. I'll put it in right now. I'll take the Panthers plus 10.
I agree with you. Team that's really injured right now is the San Francisco 49ers. Sunday Night Football. They host the Dallas Cowboys.
Wide receiver got shot 2 months ago.
He's the healthiest receiver.
I mean,
he's their healthiest wide receiver. It's a little different when they're not. And Trent Williams got really frustrated at the end of last week's game. You could see it's just everything's gone wrong for them this year. They're really banged up. And it's hard. It would be hard for me to really trust them. I mean, every time Dallas is in a spot like this, they get blown out. Against the San Francisco team in particular, they've not matched up well. But this isn't that same San Francisco team. I don't know if I could really play them covering with margin right now. Can you get involved on the Dallas side? What are your thoughts on Sunday Night Football?
Games like this on Sunday night, I absolutely love because I'm able to go to bed early.
Yeah,
I have
no interest
in this game at all. I don't trust either one of these teams. Dak struggles as an underdog, only 44% against the number. Since 2020, 27%. But when you look at the flip side, Dak on extended rest is 18-6 against the number. So those two trends kind of cancel each other out, if you will. What's going on with Debo? I think this thing with Debo is a little scarier than people realize. You have to be insanely doing not well to be hospitalized with pneumonia. You know what I mean? Like, that's just not something you're just going to go to the hospital for unless you're really bad off. And we've seen that this offense struggles when there is no Debo in the mix. What's going on with Jordan Mason? He's still a little banged up. They just have a lot of injuries. But the flip side, you trust the Cowboys. This team has done nothing that bleeds, hey, this is a team I can
nothing. Their defense is awful. They can't stop the run, even with a lacking
Parsons
group of receivers.
Parsons could go. So, look, if you guys want to play this, obviously, I'd probably take the road dog here. But why?
We like a lot more games than this one.
Yeah, why force it? So
yeah, no way.
I'm just gonna sit back. I'm not gonna do anything, and I'll go to bed early and be well rested for Monday Night Football.
And then we have the Steelers hosting the Giants. The Steelers are a 6.5-point favorite. Russell Wilson played last week. The slowish start. I think you saw with Russell Wilson, like the differences between him and Justin Fields. Justin Fields probably has maybe a safer floor. He's going to pick up some more first downs with his legs. Wilson is going to look to throw the ball down the field a little bit more and get guys like Pickens and some of their weapons involved. So it's got two different teams with their quarterbacks that will take a little more of their identity, but maybe a higher ceiling with the Steelers if Wilson and everything is going well for them. But this is still a pretty big number for them. Another team that they're coming off their highest scoring week of the year, but they don't really score a whole lot generally, the Steelers, and it's almost a touchdown spread here. They're a 6.5-point favorite over the Giants when everybody saw the Giants just get destroyed. Everybody's kind of making fun of them because they got beat up by their ex-girlfriend with a new, better looking boyfriend who's just better overall, comes back and just makes fun of them. So everybody was laughing at them. Nobody really wants to play the Giants here. That's when you're supposed to play a team like the Giants. Any opinion, Monday Night Football?
Here's a trivia question for you. Who is the most double team guy? Who's the guy on defense that faces double teams the most time? That has been doubled the most this season?
Neighbors?
No, a defensive player.
Oh, defensive player. Oh, Watt?
Nope.
We go in Lawrence?
Correct.
Yeah.
So what does that do? The Steelers do have some injuries on the offensive line, are a little banged up. If they have to run and double Lawrence, that's going to open up stuff for Burns to get to Wilson, who is not the most mobile quarterback and historically in his career has struggled when facing a pass rush. So that's something there. That's something. Can the Giants defensive line protect, though? That is offensive line, excuse me. That is the $1 million question. Are they going to be able to protect Jones? If they can't protect Jones, he's going to be a sitting duck there. But I really think after what we saw last week, DeBoll, for how smart as he is, he's going to do something. Is it have two tight ends? Roll Jones out a little bit more. There's going to be a game plan there. And I really think where this number is inflated because the Steelers just won a primetime game against Aaron Rodgers as a dog. Now everyone's going to go back. Oh, they're laying 6.5, 6 against the Giants team who isn't that good, just got embarrassed. I say it every week. Tomlin, we fade as a favorite. 48% ATS is a favorite, laying 3.5 or more, 46%. I feel it's a letdown spot. Jones, 55% as a dog. Road dog, 67%. I think there's a clear path with the Giants defensive line being able to Wilson, make him a little bit uncomfortable. And then you mix in some stuff to Neighbors, some stuff to Wendell Robinson, who's top 5 in the league in targets. Giants got some pieces here. I think this Giants team is a lot better than we realized. If they can just get their offensive line intact, this could be a team that could do some things.
They had a bad game last week. It happens. Every team's got a few of them. Things went wrong. They got their butts kicked. Their offensive line was getting beat up on. The Eagles came to play. They had a big scheme. They got up for Barkley. Just feels like the right spot for the Giants. Erik, buddy, you and I will be talking again on Sunday morning for NFL Betting Blitz, 11 o'clock a.m. Eastern time. Come and join us on our YouTube channels and make sure to subscribe to them there. Anything you want to mention before we get out of here?
No, let's go Lions.
Let's go Lions. They look like one of the best teams in football right now. Thanks so much, everyone, for hanging out with us. If you're on the YouTube channel, if you can, subscribe below. That's a big help. And we will be back in a few days getting you all set up for the Sunday and Monday games on NFL Week 8.